channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We got what actually happened with these NFL trades. Let's check this
There are
out.
countless trades in the NFL each and every year in hopes of propelling a team towards a Super Bowl. Some trades are very minor, as they happen during the NFL draft, and a lot of the time you'll see teams trade a few 6th-round picks in order to move up earlier in the round. And a lot of the time, nothing comes out of those trades. But a couple of times per year, there are big NFL trades. And in today's video, we're going to go back and discuss what happened with several NFL trades over the past few years. We will break down what the thought process was for each team at the time, how the player or draft pick has or has not worked out for them since the trade, and if there were any long-term ramifications from the said trade. We aren't going to be breaking down just the Matt Stafford and Jared Goff trade, or just the Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins trade either. We will break those down, but we're going to discuss several trades that you may have forgotten about that had a substantial impact for both teams involved, good or bad. And there is a lot to break down in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin.
Alright.
And we are starting today's video by discussing one of the biggest trades over the past 5 years, and it was when the Rams stunned everyone and made a monumental trade for veteran quarterback Matt Stafford. The Rams had gotten close over the first few...
This was definitely the most even trade, bro, we've seen in a while. Now, Rams did get a Super Bowl out of it, but... Hey, Jared Goff has been very efficient
years of Sean McVay's career, as they had a 43-21 record between 2017 and 2020, and as we know, made it to the Super Bowl in 2018. But they didn't think it was enough, and rather than being close to the mountaintop, they pushed all of their chips to the center of the table and traded for a player they thought would propel them to a Super Bowl victory in Matt Stafford. And credit the Rams for having the guts to make this trade, as a lot of teams talk about going all in and never actually do, but this was the definition of going all in, and it worked. They traded Jared Goff along with 2 first-round picks as well as a 3rd-round pick in exchange for Stafford, and won a Super Bowl in Stafford's first year. And it was a pretty iconic Super Bowl path, as they destroyed the Cardinals in the wild card round, then went into Tampa to beat the GOAT himself in Tom Brady, and narrowly avoided another comeback win from Tom and the Bucs, as well as defeating the division rival 49ers in the NFC Championship game, before beating the Bengals on their home field at SoFi Stadium. No matter what happened after this Super Bowl, it worked out for the Rams, period. That was their goal, and they accomplished it. Anything else was icing on the cake. Now, for the Lions, this is where things get a little complicated, because people want to make this an apples-to-apples comparison and basically say that, well, the Lions have not won a Super Bowl since this trade, so they, in theory, are the losers of the trade. And I personally do not like this stance or this ultimatum that you have to win a Super Bowl for the trade to be worth it. Now, the Lions eventually traded both of the first-round picks on draft day trades, and they used the 32nd pick in the 2022 draft to go get Alabama wide receiver Jameson Williams. Their 2023 first-round pick was a top 6 pick because the 2022 Rams had a down year due to several reasons. They were a very top-heavy roster, and their 3-star players at the time in Matt Stafford, Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp all missed significant time, and the Rams finished the year 5-12, much to the surprise of everyone. Detroit traded back with the Cardinals, who came up to pick 6, who actually traded back from pick 3 to pick 12, so the Texans could go get Will Anderson, and the Cardinals eventually drafted Paris Johnson with the 6th pick. The Lions acquired the 12th pick in the 2023 draft, as well as the 34th pick in the 2023 draft, and selected Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. And the main reason why I hate the conversation of the Rams definitively won this trade because they won a Super Bowl is because the Lions did everything right within this trade. If the Lions keep Matt Stafford and do not have these extra picks, do they win 12 games and go to the NFC Championship game in 2023 without having Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta? I personally don't think so. And do they win a franchise record 15 games in 2024 without Jahmyr Gibbs, who, by the way, had 1,900 total yards and 20 total touchdowns this past year, as well as Jameson Williams having a 1,000-yard receiving season himself? No, and there's a reason the Lions have went 27-7 over the last 2 years in the regular season. If you ask any Lions fans that's experienced the past 15 or 20 or even days before Barry Sanders if they would make this trade, the answer is yes, 100 times out of 100. This team had one playoff win in franchise history prior to Dan Campbell being the team's head coach and Brad Holmes being the team's general manager in the Super Bowl era. And obviously you have to hit on the picks for it to be worth it, but the Lions flipped Matt Stafford for Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta, and even defensive back Afatu Melifonwu, who had a pretty big following amongst Lions fans and is now a Miami Dolphin. And because of the success from both sides, this, to me, is a win-win trade. Now, whenever the Broncos traded for Russell Wilson, they were expected to compete for a Super Bowl immediately. They were supposed to be led by Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett, and this was...
I think this was during the offseason where every team in the AFC West was, like, going to potentially make the playoffs or something like that, because all of them were stacked. Then... we all know what happened.
The division that, of course, had Patrick Mahomes, who is Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert at the time was coming off of a spectacular second season in which he threw for over 5,000 yards and 38 passing touchdowns. And at the time, Russ was coming off of a 4-year span in which he had 131 passing touchdowns to 31 interceptions. And the Broncos gave up quite a haul to bring in Russell Wilson. They gave up 3 players as well as 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and also a 5th-round pick that was eventually used in a later trade in the 2022 draft. But the players were Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant, and the 2022 first-round pick for Seattle eventually became left tackle Charles Cross. The 2023 first-round pick eventually became Devin Witherspoon, and the second-round picks were used on Boye Mafe and Derek Hall, the pass rusher from Auburn. The Broncos also had a 4th-round pick that was used on Iyama Uzurike, and obviously this trade did not work out for Denver. And whenever this trade was made, it was a lot of Super Bowl or bust expectations for Denver, especially because Russ was a significantly different player at the time than who he is today. And it's unfortunate that Russ has fallen off the way he has, but Russ during his time in Seattle was a borderline Hall of Fame player. And there's people that legitimately think Russ should be in the Hall of Fame because of the first 9 or 10 years of his career. Unfortunately, Russ started to stink it up for the Broncos pretty quickly, as he had just 8 passing touchdowns in his first 11 games as a Bronco, and Nathaniel Hackett did not work out as the head coach either, and he was fired before the season's end in 2022. I think the biggest summarization of the Russell Wilson Broncos era was one of the most famous games over the past 5 years, and it was that Thursday night game between the Broncos and Colts, in which nobody can forget. If you saw that game, you remember that game, and it was certainly one of the NFL games that have been played over the past 5 years. That's a good summarization of Russell Wilson as a Denver Bronco. Obviously, Denver lost this trade in a big way, but I do want to credit General Manager George Patton, Sean Payton, and the scouting department for rebounding from this trade and working through the Russell Wilson contract mess the way they have over the past few years. It's all about hitting on your draft picks as a franchise, and Seattle more than hit on both Charles Cross and Devin Witherspoon, as I really think it's a matter of time until both players are extended, and especially Witherspoon, who I think is one of the better corners in the NFL that, unfortunately for him, is a tad underrated. There was a point in time where Davante Adams was coming off of a 2-year span in which he had 238 receptions, over 2,900 yards, and had 29 touchdowns. And not surprisingly, he was a back-to-back first-team All-Pro in this span. He was traded prior to the 2022 season to the Las Vegas Raiders so that he could play with his collegiate teammate Derek Carr, and he had a really good year for the Raiders in 2022 as he had 100 receptions for 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns, and was for the 3rd consecutive year a first-team All-Pro. But what did the Packers do with the picks from the Davante Adams trade? Well, in the 2022 first round, they selected Georgia linebacker Quay Walker, who I do not think will receive a second contract with the team and has had an up-and-down first few years with the Packers. They used the 2nd-round pick from the Davante Adams trade to trade up in the draft, as they also had their own 2nd-round pick. So they used pick 53, which was the pick from the Davante trade, and pick 59 to move up to pick 34, which belonged to the Minnesota Vikings, so that they could select wide receiver Christian Watson. And a couple of years later, Davante Adams is now a Ram after his stint with the Raiders and the Jets, and I would say that the Raiders won this trade in the grand scheme of things. I think Christian Watson is a really talented player who unfortunately can't stay healthy, and I wish him the best in his recovery and hope that he can prove to be the player that he was and showed flashes of being back in his rookie season in 2022. But for the Raiders to have a first-team All-Pro from the trade that they made with the Packers, while the Packers have a first-round, not necessarily bust, but certainly disappointment in Quay Walker and a player who can't stay healthy in Christian Watson, I do think the Raiders won this trade, and unfortunately the Packers came out on the losing end. Next up is the Tyreek Hill trade, in which the Chiefs sent star receiver Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins in exchange for...
This might be a win-win trade because of the fact that Tyreek Hill's had 2 of his best seasons of his career, But on the other hand, they haven't won a single playoff game since trading for him. Well, as for the Chiefs, they've gotten 2 Super Bowl rings out of it and have made 3 since trading him away. So I don't know.
Draft picks.
I don't know.
It's
kind of hard to
first, second, and fourth, as well as a 2023 fourth and sixth. And if you were wondering how the Dolphins had the 29th pick in the first round in the first place, it was because of the Trey Lance trade from the 49ers they made the year prior. The Dolphins traded the 49ers' first-round pick, which was pick 29, and they traded their second-round pick, which was pick 50, and then the Chiefs made several moves with the picks Miami sent after this trade was finalized. Of the 5 picks Miami traded for Tyreek, Kansas City actually sent 2 of those 5 to go get corner Trent McDuffie in a draft day trade with New England. They used the 29th pick and the 121st pick, as well as a 2022 third, which was their own, to move up 8 spots in the draft to go get the future All-Pro corner. And what's kind of funny is, for as big of a hit as a draft trade as this was for Kansas City, drafting an All-Pro corner with the first-round pick they received from the Tyreek Hill trade, they actually traded back from pick 50 to pick 54 with New England again, only to trade back and draft receiver Sky Moore. And while making this video, I went back and sorted through countless draft day trades where not a lot actually came out of those trades, this being one of them. New England traded up 4 picks to go get receiver Tyquan Thornton, which was a huge reach on their part, as they thought he was a 6th-round prospect they took in the top 50, while Kansas City traded back to draft a bust of their own at pick 54 in Sky Moore, as well as receiving pick 158 from New England, which they eventually used in another trade to go get guard Darian Kinnard. Eventually, Kansas City moved the 2023 4th-round pick in a package to draft receiver Rashee Rice in the 2nd round in 2023.
He just got to stay out of trouble, bro, because this nigga about to get sued and shit.
And to summarize this trade up for Kansas City, they pretty much received Trent McDuffie, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice for Tyreek Hill. And for Kansas City to draft a multiple-time All-Pro corner and a receiver who looks to be a 1,000-yard guy in Rashee Rice, well, I'd consider this a win for them. For Miami, Tyreek Hill had back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons during his first 2 years as a Dolphin. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro and actually finished top 10 in the MVP voting in both years, which is something he never did during his time in Kansas City. Miami was also at a pivotal point in their timeline with Tua Tagovailoa, and Tyreek was everything they could have hoped for and more. I don't think this is a situation where you can sit here and say, oh, well, what about the Dolphins not winning a playoff game and the Chiefs winning back-to-back Super Bowls and even go playoffs in the first place? And one thing we talk about on the channel pretty regularly is context within games and context within seasons. And are we going to sit here and talk about wide receiver wins and how Tyreek should have had a game like he had against the Bucs in the 2020 regular season to propel Miami to a playoff victory? No. Like with the Detroit and LA trade where the team swapped quarterbacks, I think this was a win-win for both.
Playoff wins is a team stat, bro. Same goes for Super Bowls, bro. It's a team stat. So you can't really put that all on Tyreek.
I also fully understand that Tyreek did not have a great 2024 season, but they traded a whole lot to get him, and he played above a level we had never seen during his time in KC. And Tyreek Hill became the first receiver in NFL history to have back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons. It is genuinely unfortunate that Miami did not have the team success during the peak Tyreek Hill seasons, but to say they lost this trade would not be accurate either. Mike McDaniel was in his bag in the first 2 years, and whether it was with cheat motion plays that we saw at the beginning of the 2023 season, or any other way he got the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands, well, Tua doesn't lead the league in passing yards and finished top 5 in passing touchdowns in 2023 without Tyreek Hill. And I think it's absolutely fair to say both sides came out of the trade as winners. I figured in a video discussing big trades over the past couple of years that we'd have to at least mention the A.J. Brown going to Philadelphia trade, and obviously we know that Tennessee thought they were getting the next A.J. Brown and Treylon Burks, and obviously we know that didn't work out. But what is not mentioned when discussing that trade is Tennessee also received a 3rd-round pick, which was pick 101, and they also had their 1st-round pick in the 2022 draft, which they traded out of with the Jets so that the Jets could go up and get Jermaine Johnson. Tennessee eventually traded pick 101 to the Jets. The Titans selected corner Roger McCreary, tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere, which obviously did not work out, and I've unfortunately watched a lot more NPF tape than I would have liked to over the past couple of years, and wide receiver Kyle Phillips. So aside from the A.J. Brown-Treylon Burks swap, I at least wanted to conclude what came out of that trade to begin with. Next up is a trade that I don't think it's discussed really at all anymore, and it's Roquan Smith going to the Ravens. And since Roquan Smith has been a Raven, he has not been a first-team All-Pro. His first-team All-Pro was in 2022, and he's in back-to-back first-team All-Pros, and is now a 5-time All-Pro, as he had 2 second-team All-Pros during his time in Chicago.
Hey, he definitely turned our defense around, bro, when we traded for him.
With one more year, that would probably solidify him as a Hall of Famer. Personally, I think he's a Hall of Famer now, but he was traded for linebacker A.J. Klein in a 2023 second and 2023 fifth-round pick, and the 2023 second-round pick was used on defensive tackle Gervon Dexter, and the fifth-round pick was also used on, ironically, a linebacker in Penei Sewell's younger brother, Noah Sewell. I think it's pretty clear to say that Baltimore definitively won this trade, and while Ryan Poles has done a lot of good things as the Bears GM, this was not one of them. There are several other trades the Bears specifically have made over the past couple of years, and one other bad move that Poles made was trading a second-round pick for Chase Claypool, which was actually the 32nd overall pick, because
hold up, because we got to talk with Mike Tomlin on this, bro. This nigga just completely robbed the Bears with this trade game. Oh my gosh.
Dolphins lost their first-round pick in the 2023 draft, so the Bears basically traded Chase Claypool for corner Joey Porter Jr. of the Steelers, and obviously the Steelers won that trade. The big trade that Ryan Poles made where he definitively won was trading the 2023 first overall pick to the Carolina Panthers, in which the Bears received DJ Moore, who is, of course, DJ Moore and a very good receiver in his own rights, as well as eventually drafting Caleb Williams, corner Tyreek Stevenson, offensive tackle Darnell Wright, punter Torrey Taylor, and 2025 second-round pick Luther Burden, who I have very, very high hopes for. So for the Bears to receive all of that while the Panthers received Bryce Young, a player who I do think is on the rise and will be a good quarterback for the next couple of years for Carolina, I do think it's definitely fair to say that Chicago won that trade, and that I don't think this necessarily was a win-win, because Carolina lost a perennial 1,000-yard receiver in DJ Moore and lost several other key draft assets that they could have used to try and help out Bryce Young. Now, I fully understand they had to move up to go get Bryce Young, but this is a really tough trade to look back on a couple of years later for the Carolina Panthers, given everything they've gone through in 2023 and 2024, though, like we said, things are looking up for the Panthers. You don't really realize how many trades go down in the NFL year in and year out, because for every Matt Stafford trade going to the Rams, or for every Devontae Adams going to the Raiders, or Roquan Smith going to the Ravens, there are hundreds of trades that happen, whether it's on draft weekend or whether it's towards the end of the preseason when a team wants to acquire a player in exchange for a 7th-round pick so that they can be their 52nd or even 53rd player on their roster, just so they are more comfortable by having a depth piece, specifically along the offensive line or defensive line, or even in the corner room is usually how those trades go. And one that happened back in August of 2022 was one that really changed the history of the NFL forever, as the Jags acquired offensive tackle Cole Van Lanen in exchange for a 2023 7th-round pick that the Packers eventually used on corner Anthony Johnson Jr. Now, jokes aside, because I'm sure you're probably busting a gut laughing at that joke, the Chiefs made a really good trade on day 3 of the 2021 draft, as they wanted to move up in the 5th round so that they could go get tight end Noah Gray. They traded a 5th and a late 6th-round pick in exchange for another 5th and 6th-round pick.
I feel like he definitely going to be Trav's
so that the Jets could draft Jason Pinnock and Jonathan Marshall, and that the Chiefs could draft Noah Gray and Trey Smith. And we recently did a video on the Chiefs and everything that's transpired with the Chiefs over the past couple of years, which will be linked at the end, and I highly recommend going to check that out. But the Chiefs have built the team they have over the past few years by having consistent draft steals and consistent successful drafts, and it's by making a trade like that so that they can go get a Noah Gray, who has played a pretty solid role for the Chiefs, all things considered, and has been a successful 5th-round pick. And Trey Smith was obviously a unique player in a very unique situation, was the fact that Kansas City was still willing to take a chance on him. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as we are closing in on 200,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day.
Hey man, shoot, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Y'all let me know what other NFL videos I'm going to react to, man. Without further ado, I'm out.
I'm chosen, I'ma make them feel me, make them people when they chow me. And if you don't know me, I'ma make sure that you know me. I hate to say it, but I really think I'm broke. But I know I'm chosen, I really know I'm chosen. I know I'm chosen. I was just lost a year ago, but now I'm focused. When good at sports, this microphone can be my trophy. Not taking drugs, I found a better way of coping.